Hello, welcome to another episode of Forgotten Cemeteries, Pacific Northwest. Today we're at Masonic Cemetery, Saint Helens. Located in Saint Helens, Oregon, Columbia County. Alternative names include German Hill, Evergreen, Liberty Hill, Near Family, Old Masonic, and Saint Helens Pioneer Masonic. So let's go meet some local residents and hear their story. Nice view, huh? Alrighty, a little history about this one. It was established in 1853, so one of our older visits. However, I did read 1847, a guy named Caleb Neer donated 1 acre for our family cemetery, so maybe it's older than presented. Oregon Burial Site Guide shows about 100 to 500 burials. Find a grave is showing 306 memorials, however. From my understanding, the cemetery isn't that active, maybe like 1 to 2 individuals a year based on the Find a Grave log. Johann Matheson made a good point in his book that these older fraternal-based cemeteries have been abandoned by their initial owners. Here's a screenshot of his book if you're interested. It's a pretty good little book and guide to Oregon cemeteries. So as said, in 1847, the land was donated for a family cemetery. Then in 1853, the first Masonic burial was held. In 1872, the Saint Helens Masonic Lodge bought the cemetery plus the land. The Neers were known to be German, hence one of the alternative names is German Hill Cemetery. Then during World War I, the name changed again to Liberty Hill Cemetery. There are McBrides here, some famous ones actually, and if you remember, we visited the grave of Thomas McBride in Yamhill County, a pioneer Christian preacher in Oregon. There's allegedly a ton of unmarked graves here as well, unfortunately. As far as the city of Saint Helens, it was founded by Captain Henry Montgomery Knighton, a pioneer of 1845, so early arrival to Oregon. He named St. Helens New Plymouth Casana originally in 1845. Sorry, I had to take a little break there. Different view. A plane flew over and was drowning out the noise. But back to the story here. Kennesaw was a tribute to Chief Casino, a well-known Indian who lived nearby. Captain Knighton was born in New England area, more specifically New Jersey, hence the name earlier of Plymouth, when he originally wanted to name St. Helens New Plymouth. An ad in a newspaper mentioned that only 2 people lived here in 1847, and in 1849 there were only like 2 houses present. However, in 1850 the name changed officially to St. Helens due to the view of the mountain. Should note, November 5th, 1805, Lewis and Clark spent the night in this area. In addition, St. Helens has quite the Halloween spirit from my readings, with a month-long celebration in October. In fact, the movie Halloween Town used St. Helens as a backdrop, and the movie Twilight was filmed here. No comment on that movie. Katie Sackhoff also grew up here. If you ever seen the TV show Longmire, which is a pretty good TV show. Today we'll talk about a lost at sea story, a woman who basically lost her whole family in a span of 20 years. We'll learn about wood fungus. That ought to be exciting. Pioneer physicians in the area, the famous 20th Maine Civil War Regiment, and finally, the legendary story of the Italian-made musical instruments. And one of our residents here was so brokenhearted about the loss of his violin, it may have caused his death, unfortunately. And I believe I found the marker of the individual we talked about in the history of the cemetery, Caleb Abraham Neer, born in 1809 in Germany, an 1852 arrival in Oregon, and pretty popular name in the area. In fact, there's a Neer cemetery close to here I'm planning on visiting soon, so that should be a good one. And here is Elizabeth M. Crandoll Perry, I think that's how you say it, that middle name. Born in Tuckahoe, New Jersey. That sounds like an Urban Dictionary word, but there is some meaning behind the name. It is named after the wild Tuckahoe, the scalarium of the wood fungus, also referred to as Indian bread. I know I've grabbed your full attention now. Anyways, Elizabeth is a very early arrival into Oregon, 1845, if you will, and I think it says on their headstone there, pioneers of 1845. This area had very few doctors, as you can imagine, during this time, but Elizabeth served that role apparently treating the white man and the Indians. She had some pretty good medical skills for some reason. Turns out, during the year of 1845, a man who would become a famous doctor in Oregon named Dr. James Whitten Boyle was teaching Elizabeth everything he knew along the trail. Also loaned her books. Must have been a fast learner because she was the go-to person in the area for medical treatment. She was known to travel by horse, canoe, and walking to help the local community. At times, she would even travel all the way to Portland. Overall known as a caring and giving individual, answering any call of the sick, even traveling at night to locations. To add, she had 14 children, so she was a very busy individual. Alright, this is not the headstone of Nelson Hoyt. I believe it's of his wife. I don't think he has a marker here for some reason. Like when I went on Find a Grave, there was like no pic of a headstone except this one, so I think they're just assuming he's over here somewhere. But he was born in Stamford, Connecticut in 1820. He was one of the earliest settlers in this area, being a part of the 1847 immigration. He lived along the Scappoose Bay, but he and his wife moved to Astoria at one time. They both died in Astoria at older ages, and their remains were moved here. Nelson was voted into the state legislature for one term, actually. I did come across a sad story of one of Nelson's sons, William J. Hoyt. The ship called the Bessie Rudder returned from a seal hunting trip and landed in Astoria. The ship and the crew would leave Astoria for another voyage, William being on board. That ship would never be seen again and was presumed to be lost in the Sea of Japan in the year 1892. The only thing I could find on that ship disappearance was a fur trade review from 1892 that briefly, and I mean briefly, said, quote, "If the ship is not found within 1 week or two, the search will be given up as lost at sea," end of quote. Sounds like that was the result. What may be one of the more unique and interesting headstones is of Captain Francis Adam Lamont, born in 1812 in Bath, Maine. Unique city name. Tough to track down info on him. I did find he appeared to be a well-respected individual, however. Couldn't find any of his time in Maine, but appears he might have been a lighthouse keeper, or maybe he was a ship captain. You see on his headstone, "Shine your light, guide me home," so I based that strictly on his headstone detail. He is a pioneer of 1850. Other than that, looks like he was a farmer based on the census, and that's it. But thought I'd check out his headstone, unique one. Alright, I'll give you a better view of the headstone. It's a really pretty one, kind of a pillar style with all these little unique carvings in it. But this would be the pillar of the McBride family, but we're looking on the side of Dr. James McBride, born in 1802 in Nashville, Tennessee. He's an immigrant of 1845, so again, early arrivals. He would settle in Yamhill County at first, most likely because that is where his father is buried, the famous Christian preacher, pioneer, Thomas McBride. And we visited that one if you want to see a good one. James would come to Saint Helens area in 1870. He would be one of the most prominent physicians in the area, and in addition was a U.S. minister to the Hawaiian Islands in 1863. Amongst the stones is our next individual, who has no marker. It'd be of John G Henrich. I think that's how you say his name. Interesting story of a guy that just had a love of violins. John was born in Hamburg, Germany in 1838. Unsure when he came over to America, but he was younger at the time. He is an 1851 pioneer of Oregon. From what I read, he was the leader of the orchestra in this area and pretty skilled. He owned something called a Stradivarius violin. Basically, these musical instruments were highly sought after and built by an Italian family in the 17th and 18th century. More specifically, Antonio Stradivari. Oh boy. His instruments were legendary, apparently. The sound they produced was one of the best of the best. And it's never really been explained why the musical instrument produced by the family were classified as the best. Claims of the wood being salvaged from old cathedrals was one of the legends, but I guess that was debunked at one time. He wouldn't believe the research that went into this to finding the answer. I read that Columbia University had like a climatologist perform a study on the wood during the Ice Age and wood density. I mean, it's gotten as far as that. People have tried to replicate the family's violin design and have come up empty, actually. So now you know the legend of the violin. So let's circle back to John. As said, he was the owner of one of these legendary violins, and the date stamped on his unit was built in 1701. John apparently refused big money offers for the violin and truly cherished the instrument. Unfortunately, a fire would break out one day, from what I read, at John's place of his residence, and the violin would be affected. This would greatly affect him as he feared for his instruments, and he was kind of panicking because all he loved was his instruments, more specifically his prized violin. Sadly, John would die at the age of 70 due to the excitement of heart failure, most likely brokenhearted at the loss of his prized musical instruments. And here is Emmeline Benton Meeker, probably the roughest path and life in the cemetery. She was from Iowa, and she was an 1852 pioneer in Oregon. In 1856, she married William Meeker. They have a daughter in 1858 named Lovica Meeker. She unfortunately dies at the age of 19. Their one son, simply known as baby son Meeker, died at the age of 2 months. He is buried at this cemetery as well. In 1871, Emmeline gives birth to Francis Meeker, and he dies at the young age of 18 in 1889. Unfortunately, things get worse. During all this, Emmeline's husband William dies in 1881. So by 1889, she lost an infant, a daughter, a son, and a husband in a span of 20 years. Luckily, she did have one son born in 1861, lived until the year 1927, so she had some company over the years until she died in 1908. I also read that Emmeline was the cousin of the famous Thomas Benton in Oregon. He's one of the champions for colonization in the Oregon Territory. And another cool factoid was that her cabin that was built in 1851 was cut from the first lumber in the Columbia County. All right, here's Dr. Charles Green Capels. Born in my home state of Ohio in 1832. Shows he immigrated to Oregon in 1844, so he was only 12 when he arrived. And I believe when his family arrived, they settled in a native fishing village, actually, which is kind of cool. In 1848, he would take part in the famous gold rush in California, still a young kid. He did that for about a year to save up tuition for him and his sister to attend Tualatin Academy. He would return to Columbia City, Oregon, about 7 minutes down the road from the cemetery. Would get married to Lucinda McBride, then take up a study in medicine in Portland. He passed his board's exam and was appointed as the state medical examiner for the insane in Monticello, Washington. I think that's how you say it. Sounded like it was a bit exhausting to do, but he traveled quite a bit for his job. Keep in mind, this was a different time and a lot of areas were still in the wild, if you will. Roads were kind of like iffy, and he often traveled long distances, sometimes at night, to perform his services. He would eventually retire and live out his days at his farm. There is a fancy Capels house if you're interested. Appears to be a museum with a ton of history. And here's our first Civil War vet stop, Alex Henderson, I think that's what was listed. Canadian born in 1835, he served in the famous 20th Maine Infantry Regiment. This regiment made one of the more surprising moves during the Battle of Gettysburg. There was a point during the battle where the 20th was under heavy fire from the Confederate division led by Confederate General John Bell Hood. This would cause the 20th to get very low on ammunition and try to hold out. At some point, the rebels start to reform, and the 20th makes the bold decision to charge at them with bayonets, sort of last-ditch effort, if you will, and it worked. The rebel army scattered, thus stopping the heavy fire upon other Union regiments. I found this 20th Maine reunion photo from 1889 on Wikipedia, and I wonder if Alex is in there by some chance. The Confederate commander, John Bell Hood, moved to New Orleans post-Civil War. He started up an insurance business, but it would collapse during the yellow fever outbreak. Hood, his wife, and his oldest daughter would succumb to the viral disease. His other 10 children would become orphans and become penniless. Our final stop at the cemetery is of Ezekiel Chariton's headstone. Born in Gallia County, Ohio in 1840. Rough upbringing, lost his mother, grandparents at an early age, and other family members. At 21 years old, he joined the Union Army during the Civil War for Company K of the Ohio 33rd Regiment Infantry. The regiment fought in quite a bit of battles. However, Ozias would be wounded at the Battle of Lookout Mountain. This battle would result in a Union victory and serve as a gateway to the South as Chattanooga would be taken over. Post-Civil War, he would marry Sarah Jane Johnson Charrington in 1867. They would have a child together named Verona Charrington. However, Ozias' wife Sarah would die 10 months later after the marriage at the age of 26. She is buried somewhere at an unknown marker in Ohio. Ozias doesn't appear to have a stable life, just one death after another in his family. Just kind of heartbreaking. In 1875, he would travel by train to San Francisco and take a boat up the Pacific coast. He arrived in Columbia County and built a cabin in the Helen Valley. He would be the first teacher there, apparently. And this is interesting. In 1877, the town decided to name itself after Ozias' daughter. Remember Verona mentioned earlier? So now you could tell everyone how the name Verona, Oregon came about. And coincidentally, Ozias would never see her again for some reason. I couldn't find out why. I think he became a farmer at some point, and sadly, records show he fell off a ladder, I believe, sustained significant injuries where he died afterwards. I believe he was only 53 at the time. Pretty amazing guy that fought for our country, but had a trail heartache in his life. Alrighty, time for the tour, and recommend this one mainly because of the awesome view. There is like kind of a gravel pit down there. It's a little loud. I'd show you, but quite a hike down there. You get a nice view of the valley, and the cemetery overlooks it. To get to this cemetery, it's a little tricky. Take Liberty Hill Road up to the gate. Just look for the blue gate on your right and you'll eventually see it. It is locked. I think they make some claim that you could stop at the fire department for the code. to get into the cemetery road, but I just walked up. There's no signs for it over there. I think there's one at the bottom of the road. It says Masonic Cemetery. And there's the Mason symbol. There's some pretty cool headstones here, so I'll try not to spend too much time at them. Bore you guys. But quite a bit of art into them. I am seeing vandalism. There are some that are cracked in the center. Some are worse than others. Some are, I don't even know how they're holding on. It's like, you'll see a few during the tour. This one was really unique. I don't know if I've seen one like that, where it has like the script. And just a lot of detail overall. Here's an example of something long gone. Just the two studs. I think there's a few new people over there. There's some funny sayings on some of them, actually. I'll try to find the one I found earlier. Pretty neat. I don't know if I sign that. With the sheep on the headstone. Guessing Lamb of God, that's what it means. But yeah, there's a lot of young deaths here, children. This is one of the headstones I was talking about. I don't know if it was vandalized or what. Here's someone's repaired it at one point, but this one, no clue how that's staying on there. But one of the prettier ones with the carving. Kenzie Capels. Hey, born in Ohio. A lot of Ohio people here, which is nice. Nice one. I think the McBrides are coming up, if you remember them from McBride Cemetery. Pretty influential people in the area. I am noticing a lot of those thin headstones are cracked in the center, like they were busted at one point. But I think this is the biggest one in the cemetery for the McBrides as far as memorials. I'm guessing those are the original little tombstones. As you can see, tall one. A lot of them are kind of hard to read, but if you sit there for a little bit, you kind of make it out. I had trouble finding them. Like this one's very difficult, but you guys might be able to see it on the camera better. Born in Dublin, Ireland. Oh wow. Died at Union Ridge. That's pretty. Here's the Weeping Willow. Seen that before. Dang, that's a big ass headstone. Same with this one. Didn't go on the cheap, huh? I guess that's kind of good based on all the thin ones getting busted, but I don't think you could break theirs. Here's another Masonic one. McKay. Oh, we've seen that name, last name before. I wonder if there's any relation. Maybe the Eastern Star Order? That's a little cool one. Find Ozias over there. We talked about Civil War vet. Artistry went into that one. Like I said, man, one of the more peaceful ones with an awesome view. Just getting here might be a tiny bit of a challenge, not too bad, but it's kind of a little mini adventure. FCB with a triangle like that? I have no idea what that is, so maybe I'll look that up later. Maybe someone out there knows. I don't think I've ever seen that. If I do find out, I'll put it in the notes. Pretty nice one over by the trees. Born in Drochtensheim, Germany. Let's go with that. So good mix here. Got a Highlands, Germans, Irishmen. Somebody over here all by themselves. Born in 1800. Wow. I lived a long life. I didn't check out that little gated one over there. I wonder who that's of. And there's another headstone. I have no idea how it's staying together. Just has that old cemetery feel. It's neat. It's a good one. This one is dang, you know. Aaron Broyles. Unfortunately, that stone got beat up over the years. And this is John Woods. Must have missed out on his story. Maybe he was pretty popular. Only 25 years old when he died. There is a couple over here. Oh, funny staying on their headstone. Thought you guys might enjoy it. Their latest adventure in awareness. Anyways, that's it for the cemetery, and I'll try to add like a little bonus thing at the end, the gate. And it's pretty noticeable, but you do have to hike up. It's about a half mile, not too bad. But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this one. There was a lot of history. Apologies if it's a long video, but there was a lot of influential people buried here, and pretty cool stories. If you have any other recommendations for cemeteries to visit in Oregon or even Southern Washington, feel free to speak up. Hope you guys are doing good. Stay safe out there, and hope you enjoyed Masonic Cemetery in Saint Helens. And here's that blue gate I told you about, and you got to go way up that path. Half a mile, not too bad.